Okay, so before we even get into Photoshop, let's sketch out some ideas so we can brainstorm and come up with a concept before we go any further. So the first thing you need to know before you can even start sketching is what's the content that's going to be included in your project. Now we know we're doing a book cover, so we know we're going to need the author's name and a title of the book, and then of course we want some sort of graphic design or graphic on the cover. Also, because it's a book cover, what else do we know already? We know it's going to be printed in many colors, so we would want to use cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, or CMYK mode. And we also know that the size of the book cover is probably not going to be that large, so let's shoot for half the size of a letter-sized piece of paper. That would probably be a rough estimate of what size our book cover would be. So we know the size, we know the content, and we know we need many colors for it. So here's a program called Sketchbook Express. It's brought to you by Autodesk. It's free, and it's available for mobile devices and for the Mac. Windows users can find numerous free drawing programs around the internet to help them sketch out their ideas. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw just two rectangles to represent our covers. And I'm not using this program to show you how to use the program. I'm just going to use it here to show you how to brainstorm. So we've got two rectangles just to represent our two different covers. Remember, we're doing one for a young adult to early 20s and the other one for an elementary aged child. So we're talking about the secret garden. Now we saw in the sample, which was the original cover, we saw a girl looking through some vines, possibly at some sort of fence. So I'm thinking what I might want to do is actually draw a gate. So we can just start with maybe just a regular shaped door. Maybe we have a fence there. And because it's a secret garden and it's locked and it's hard to get to, I'm thinking a picket fence wouldn't be the right kind of style fence, maybe more of a brick wall. So we can quickly sketch out what a brick wall may look like. And we've got our door or our gate, and then we want to include, we said we need the title and we need the author's name. So it seems that it's very common in republishing books from many years ago, classic type novels, that the author's name is usually placed in a prominent area either at the top or the bottom. So I'm going to put this one at the top. I'm thinking down at the bottom maybe we have some sort of path to the gate and maybe some bushes of some sort. And again, we're just brainstorming. We're going to have to go out on the internet and we're going to have to find these pictures to be able to create our design. And maybe we have some sort of vines that come down and block and cover part of the wall and part of the door. And then maybe the title of the book is written in the door area. And I'm thinking that because at this point, with all the shrubs and the flowers and the vines and a brick wall, that the text may not stand out against those items. But we'll see when we actually get designing it to see how that looks. So right now I'm thinking the title could go on the door or the gate and the author's name at the top. And then maybe my other one, that seems like a simple door. Maybe we want something that's a little different for the second cover. So maybe one with an arch. And maybe we need another style fence. Maybe we need this fence, instead of being brick, maybe it's made of wood, but it's a solid fence, like a privacy fence. And it's probably worn, so it's old wood, maybe it's grayed out some. And again, we probably still want some vines on it to hide the door or the gate and to hide the fence. And we still probably want some shrubs to block the path to get to the door. And we want to put the author's name on here. And we need the title somewhere. So I'm thinking, just looking at these two different styles, that perhaps the one on the right is more suited for a young child, just because that door seems more approachable and more friendly that a child may be interested in going in there. They wouldn't be afraid of it. The one on the left, because of the style of the door and the style of the fence, it seems to be a little bit more scary and dark and ominous. So I'm going to say the one over here is probably more designed for a young adult. Now, what are some other things we can think of when we're designing for a young adult versus a child? What else can we do to make these differentiate besides just, essentially right now, it looks like only the fence and the door are different. So probably the font would be something we could consider. So if we're looking at a font for an elementary age child, we probably can't assume that that child knows how to read cursive or script font. So we probably want something that's printed rather than cursive. We might want something that's more of a block letter. Or we could do something maybe that looks like handwriting. That might be a good choice. Now again, we're just brainstorming, and we already have written a couple different styles of fonts, so we probably can't find something that's a block handwriting. But this is just giving us some ideas. And over here on the young adult, they can read cursive or script. So we could find a font that uses cursive, so we're not going to be limited to just print, and maybe something that's more scary. So those are two things we can consider when we're picking out our font, because again, we're changing the tone of the book. Normally what we've seen in these remakes of these fairy tales, they're starting to make them more scary and more dark in their presentation. Okay, what else can we do? We can probably consider color. So a child who's in elementary school probably be attracted to bright colors or the primary colors. They're very familiar with those, they stand out, so that might attract them right off the bat. So over here, we're talking about, for a young adult, we're looking at scary, and we're looking at maybe at cursive handwriting. So we probably want darker colors to go with the theme of the book and how it's changed for that age group. So just by considering the style of the door, the style of your font, and what colors you're working with, you've now been able to come up with some ideas for your design for two different age groups.